qualified to receive. Paul is showing here that he is qualified to receive. I want to show you why. So, brethren, verse 32. So now I commend you to the word, commend you to God and to the word of his grace, which is able to build you up and to give you an inheritance among all those who are sanctified. Look at Paul. I have coveted no one's silver or gold apparel. Meaning he wasn't comparing what he had to what other people had. Financial principle, because that will distract us. If we start trying to compare our accounts or what we have to others, we're called to manage what we've got to manage. He said, I didn't do that. Yes, you yourselves know that these hands, circle that, these hands, have provided for my necessities. I love this. Because in church we get so deep and so spiritual. And I know that God is our source and resource. But Paul said, when I had a need, they got these hands. I worked. What's interesting in here is that Paul in his ministry received offerings. We know he did because he talked about offerings all the time. But he worked. Paul was qualified to receive from God, and I'm not just talking about money, but I'm talking about in general, because he worked. Because he put in his effort. He said, when I needed something, I allowed God to use my gifts, and his gifts were his hands. He was a tent maker. To get in and do work. It takes work to progress financially. It is not just throw an offering in the bucket and hope that I get some money back. It takes work. Shout work. No. Shout work. Work is not a bad word. Work is not a cuss word. Work may be the key to your financial breakthrough. Pause right there. Shall work. Yeah, work mixed with prayer, work mixed with wise counsel, work being in the right workplace, work smart, work by faith, but work. He said, when I needed, these hands worked. Verse 35, he says, and I have shown you in every way by laboring like this, that you must support the weak. And remember the words of the Lord Jesus that he said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. This is the reason that Paul starts talking about offerings and money and that type of thing here. He said, because one of the things that you will find with these wolves that he said were coming is that they will come into the community and try to extort you. In other words, they will come in for the purpose of grabbing people's money. It was a theme over and over. He warned Timothy about it. He warned other people about it. That the wolves would come in for their own advantage. And part of what they would do would be they would come in to take, not to contribute. Paul was qualified to receive. Watch this. Because he was a contributor. The wolves that he was warning them about would be characterized this way. The only thing they would want to do when they got there was take. And you have to be careful with people who come into your life and only take. Take your time, take your peace, take your resources, take your energy, and never reinvest. Here is the key to financial breakthrough. You can't just be a taker, you also have to be an investor. You also have to be a contributor. You also have to sow into, including your church. Because whatever you sow into will grow for you. If you sow into your body, your health springs forth. If you sow exercise and good food and good diet and good rest, you have to intentionally sow into it. If you sow into your relationship with your spouse or your friend, that relationship flourishes and grows. If you sow into your work relationship at your job and you start sowing your time into it and sowing your effort into it, you're going to get promoted. It is the principle of sowing and reaping. And Paul says, or I believe what he is saying here, what I'm preaching from what he's saying here, is watch out for those that come only to take and never invest. It is the thief, Jesus said, that comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. And it's for that reason that Jesus says, blessed, it is more blessed to give, shall give, than to receive. How can that be? That only makes sense to the giver. Here's what happens when we operate in generosity, whether we're giving to our church, or we're giving to people in need, or we're giving to a friend, or we're giving to a family member. When you give, you position yourself for blessing. Here's why. When you give, you are demonstrating your God-likeness, because God primarily is a giver. God demonstrates his love through giving. How do I know? In the Garden of Eden, he gave them everything that they needed. Okay, how do I know? John chapter 3, verse 16. For God so loved the world that he told them, bought them a car and brought them flowers. For God so loved the world, how did he demonstrate it? That he gave. He became he didn't become, but he is a giver. And love is demonstrated through giving. So when we have an opportunity to give to people, we are expressing our God likeness, and that's why giving feels good. Have you ever been around someone that needed something and you had something to give them and you gave it to them and you felt good afterward, right? You just feel good. It's something that boosts your spirits. It's something that brings you joy. That's not a mistake. That's you operating in the nature of God. And the more you operate in the nature of God through giving, the more blessed you realize you are. Because there's one translation that says that the person who is giving is more happy than the person who's receiving. And so generosity becomes a lifestyle, or when it becomes a lifestyle, it opens our eyes to blessing, and it opens our eyes to our God likeness, because we're flowing and operating just like God.